I'm looking at your bio on NFL.com, and it says at the end that you get more excited about a pulling guard than a kid gets on Christmas. So you must be into offensive lines and the big uglies up front. Give us your take on the revamped offensive line here for the Commanders. They draft Josh Connerly with their first-round pick. They bring in Laramie Tunsil via trade. They shift Brandon Coleman off of tackle into the interior. What do you think of this remade offensive line for the Commanders protecting Jaden Daniels?
I mean, look, Josh Connerly was probably one of my favorite tackles at the Combine this year. I think he did make my all-Combine team because of the way he moves. I love, there's a reason that it said a pulling guard like a kid on Christmas, because I love it when I can see an offensive lineman who can move well, because I think that separates them. I think about guys even like Cam Jurgens, why the Eagles ended up drafting him when Jason Kelsey was still there, because Kelsey liked the fact that he could move and move with power. So, I thought the pick of Connolly was an ideal one for them in the long term. Tunsil, there's a big question mark about him because he's had such a very strong career and a reliable career, and then last year he just didn't play well, and it was part of an offensive line in Houston that just didn't play well, generally speaking. So you hope that he gets a bounce back, and it was one of the Commanders' many moves to win now. So I think that, overall, I like their group. I like Tyler Biadasz as well. And you continue to go down the line. You've got guys who have experience, and Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti and Michael Dieter. These are all players who have been around a bit. But I think that there is a potential for it to not work out, as with any offensive line, but I feel more encouraged about it, of course, and you think about guard Sam Cosmi, than some other offensive lines. And I mean, I think of a few elsewhere that could be an issue.
What do you think about the defensive side of the ball? Because I think most people think that that's maybe where they'll make their biggest jump. They kind of put a lot of faith in what we were calling earlier today, like a journeyman, right? In Kinlaw. I mean, kind of a guy, underachieved sort of journeyman, even though he's young. Put a lot of faith in him to kind of anchor it, it seems like. They add Von Miller, who'll be a situational pass rusher, right? We know he's not who he once was. But the secondary seems to be really improved. I feel like they can make a pretty good leap defensively.
It's the way that this team has turned around overnight reminds me a lot of the 2007 Browns, and that team that won 10 games. No, listen though, because there's a key difference between those two teams, which is these were teams that won a lot more games than people thought, and the Browns didn't make the playoffs that year because there was one less playoff spot to work with the formatting and everything else. They had Derek Anderson at quarterback. Okay, the Commanders have Jaden Daniels, who's going to be a superstar, if not already. And the reason I compare them to that 2007 Browns team is because a lot of what they did well was done by proven veterans who were just looking for another year or 2-year contract, and it fell off a cliff the next year because they didn't have much youth to work with. They had Braylon Edwards and Kellen Winslow, but like Jamal Lewis, end stage Jamal Lewis was their leading rusher the year before. So I compare that because there's a lot of those guys on the defensive side of the ball with this team, but another huge difference, you got Dan Quinn as your coach, a very experienced defensive coordinator who earned this job because of the way he turned around the Cowboys' defense, and you still have some young pieces I like. I love Frankie Louvu. I've loved him for years. Kinlaw was a guy I really liked out of college, but has not quite lived up to the expectation. But he got him next to Daron Payne. Dorrance Armstrong, he's a solid pick opposite Dietrich Wise. These are all guys that are middle or better. I am worried about how you're going to replace Dante Fowler overall, because that production that you got out of him at that rate that money-wise that he was making last year, very hard to replicate. And is Marshawn Lattimore going to be a good corner again, because he was not in the postseason? So this is not a rock-solid group, but I like the depth that has been brought there, and I like the experience, because one thing when you got a guy like Bobby Wagner playing in the middle of the linebacking core, you got a chance, and a pretty good one.